This is one of the things that frustrates me the most about Pierre Poilievre. Let me show you something. Pierre Poilievre posted this on his Instagram on Saturday. It's an article from the National Post. It is titled, Carney plan to reduce civil service will cost $1.5 billion to cut payroll by just 82 million. Here's the caption Pierre Poilievre put under his post on Instagram. It says, another masterstroke from the banker who can't budget, spending $1.5 billion to save $82 million. No wonder his deficit is twice the size of Trudeau's. There was a lot of Carney bashing in the comments, as you'd expect. Naturally, this kind of piqued my interest, not the Carney bashing, but the story. So I went and read this article that Pierre Poilievre posted. As I read the article, it became clear to me that Pierre Poilievre did not read the article. I gotta say it. Pierre Poilievre did not read the article, and neither did any of the people in the comments, most of the people in the comments. I'll show you what I mean. I'll read you word for word what the National Post article actually said. It says here, rather than conducting mass layoffs of the Canadian civil service, the Carney government is resurrecting a 1990s strategy of reducing the public sector by paying them handsomely to leave. However, despite costing $1.5 billion, it will deliver a federal payroll that will only be about $82 million cheaper per year. As such, it could presumably be up to 18 years until the program breaks even. Okay, so that's the setup. Carney promised savings in the public service. It turns out he is spending more money. And in fact, you won't see any savings for almost 20 years. And you'll see more on this next part. The article says, according to federal budget documents, the proposed early retirement incentive will cost an average of $300 million for 5 years. All to deliver ongoing savings of $82 million annually. Expected to begin rolling out next year, it wouldn't be until 2044 that the expected savings from the incentive would match the cost of making them. Now, this paragraph here is very important. Here's why. When I read you the headline, what did it say? It said, Carney plan to reduce the civil service will cost $1.5 billion to cut payroll by 82 million. Obviously, saying you're spending $1.5 billion only to save 82 million is more rage bait than saying you're actually saving $82 million annually. That's the key word right there. The word annually makes all the difference. Oh, just wait. It gets worse. Let me read you what the rest of the article says. It says, the ranks of the Canadian civil service reached an all-time high of 367,772 in 2024. This is due in large part to an unprecedented federal hiring spree overseen in the latter years of the government of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Over his 9 years in power, Trudeau swelled the number of federal bureaucrats by 42% and increased the federal payroll by 68%. Prime Minister Carney's first budget, tabled last month, promised to seek a more sustainable public service by cutting 40,000 positions. There are currently 357,965 federal employees. Nevertheless, it promised to do so as much as possible through attrition and voluntary departure. Okay, yeah, let's talk about that. So the size of the federal bureaucracy grew to unsustainable levels under Justin Trudeau. Everybody admits this, all right? Carney promised he would reduce the size of the public service. But even in this article, it clearly states that Carney said the cuts to the public service will be done as much as possible through attrition and voluntary departures. What does attrition mean? Attrition is a reduction in the number of employees, usually as a result of resignation, retirement, or death. Essentially, people are not replaced when they leave. So in spreading the cost of these cuts to the public service over 20 years, Carney is actually keeping his campaign promise and giving the opportunity for attrition and voluntary departures, right? So I think the National Post just mistakenly told the truth here for the first time ever. The National Post just mistakenly told the truth. This next part is actually interesting too. Listen to this. The article says the early retirement incentive would offer free early retirement to civil servants age 50 and over. In the most lucrative form of the incentive, a government worker with just 10 years of service could retire up to 5 years early and still collect their full pension. In sum, the incentive is effectively offering older bureaucrats up to 5 years of free paid retirement. Or as an official program backgrounder puts it, eligible employees would be able to apply to retire with an immediate pension based on years of service with no reduction for early retirement. With the average public service pension standing at about $38,870 per year, That's equivalent to offering civil servants as much as 194,000 to leave early over 5 years is the math there. Okay, the article goes on to say currently any government worker taking early retirement has to pay for it in the form of a permanent hit to their pension. For every year they retire early, their pension takes a 5% reduction. Retire 5 years early and the pension is reduced by 25%. So if a civil servant is expecting to collect the average pension of 38,870 upon retirement, that amount will drop by 5%, essentially $1,900 for every year they retire early. Retire 5 years early and they pay for it in the form of an annual pension that is permanently $9,500 less than it would have been if they had retired on time. The early retirement incentive simply waives all that. Eligible employees can take early retirement and still get their full pension. That's another interesting fact. The National Post is on fire in this article, actually. So retiring early means public servants who get cut would see their pension reduced by as much as 25%. Now, I don't know about you, but that sounds like a lot of money to lose in retirement. That is how Pierre Poilievre would like the government to treat people who have worked their entire lives for this country. That is how Pierre Poilievre would like the government to treat them. Mass layoffs. How he would take food off the plates of these retirees. Also, it turns out unions will sue your shoes off if you go the route of mass layoffs. Layoffs must follow the terms of collective agreement. Stephen Harper found this out the hard way. Sometime around 2012, during the Harper government's austerity measures, thousands of federal public servants were affected. The Public Service Alliance of Canada, the union that represents federal workers in Canada, filed grievances in court. They argued that the layoffs violated collective agreements and that the government failed to consult properly. Guess what happened? Many of these cases went to arbitration, leading to some employees getting reinstated and others received enhanced severance. So the Harper government was essentially forced to do exactly what the Carney government is doing from the start. Only the Harper government wasted a whole bunch of time in court. In fact, at $1.5 billion, the Carney government is spending less on these public service cuts than the Chrétien government did in the 90s. It cost the Chrétien government about $3 billion in buyouts and various incentives to eliminate 55,000 jobs in the 90s. That's about $55,000 per job. These numbers are part of the National Post article I was reading. This was $3 billion 90s, not 2025 dollars, 90s dollars. Remember, money had more value back then. Now, comparatively, the Carney government will be spending roughly $38,000 per job that they eliminate. That's cheaper. That's significantly cheaper than what the Chrétien government did in the 90s. Anyways, that's the end of the article. But this right here is why I've said that Pierre Poilievre will never be the Prime Minister of Canada. I think he's done. The Conservatives are not quite there yet. They haven't seen it just yet. It is clown shit like this that makes me say that Pierre Poilievre will never be the Prime Minister of Canada. He clearly did not read the article he was quoting. As a matter of fact, this article, for once, is actually balanced from the National Post. Pierre Poilievre is very shamelessly rage baiting people. And for what? It is very, very frustrating to me. Oh yeah, there's some other clown shit this week. Pierre Poilievre forced a vote on that Alberta-Canada pipeline MOU. Remember that one? The Liberals have now unanimously voted it down today. No surprise there. So Pierre Poilievre didn't get his wish to expose the divisions within the Liberal caucus. I don't know why he needed to do that. They were doing that fine all by themselves. Anyways, Pierre Poilievre gets to continue saying that the Liberals don't want a pipeline. The Liberals will continue to deny that. The Bloc and the NDP and the Greens also voted against the Conservative motion. And that left only the Conservatives to support their own motion, which is basically based on the portions of the Memorandum of Understanding. So guess what? This was absolutely a waste of everybody's time. Thank you, Pierre.